And in the same region, there were shepherds out in the field, keeping watch over their flock by night. And an angel of the Lord appeared to them, and the glory of the Lord shone round them, and they were filled with great fear. And the angel said to them, "Fear not, but behold, I bring you good news of great joy that will be for all the people. For unto you is born this day in the city of David a Saviour, who is Christ the Lord. And this will be a sign for you. You will find a baby wrapped in swaddling cloths and lying in a manger." And suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of the heavenly host, praising God and saying, "Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace among those whom he is pleased." So we pray for peace throughout the world, especially in the current trouble spots. We pray for those who are trying to broker peace or maintain it. But before this peace can be obtained, we must have peace in our hearts, in our homes, in our workplace. And that includes this hallowed place, the council chamber. If we can't have peace locally, there is not much chance globally. Let us therefore remember, not just at this time, but every day of the year, that Christ came to bring peace to everyone. We make this prayer through the same Christ that was born at Bethlehem and died and rose again in Jerusalem. Amen. So may I now ask people to offer each other a sign of peace.
Okay, that's enough. Keep it down.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Reverend. Have a good Christmas. Thank you. Please be seated. And stop the chatter. We've finished now. Are we all ready, Councillor Patel? Thank you. Right. Mayor's announcements. There are no plans for a fire alarm test. If you hear the alarm, please leave the building by the nearest exit. Please ensure mobile phones are switched off or on silent. Restrooms are located on all floors, but please ask a member of staff for details should you require one if you've forgotten where they are. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and will eventually be loaded onto the Council's YouTube channel. Can I please remind all members that whilst we can disagree politically, please remain respectful to each other whilst dealing with Council business. Now, members of the public, members and officers, you're reminded that under the Openness of Local Government Bodies Regulations 2014, the press and public may film, audio record, photograph and use social media whilst the meeting is in progress for Part A items only, and as long as no disruption is caused to the meeting. Anyone filming is asked to focus their attention on elected members rather than other visitors. Now, I have the sad duty of advising Council of the recent death of Derek Smith. Many will know Derek as the long-serving chair of Preston's Twinning Partnership Committee, where he served for over 20 years. He was an excellent and engaging ambassador for our city in this capacity. His long-standing dedication to this role earned him widespread respect and affection. Derek was made a Guild Burgess in 2012, one of the first Community Burgess Awards for his work on twinning. Derek was also chair of the Heartbeat charity for a number of years and a local magistrate for over 20 years. Derek's funeral will take place on Friday, 3rd of January, and I will be attending to pay my respects on behalf of the Council and City. We send our sincere condolences to Derek's wife Colette and his family at this sad time. He also lost one of his daughters about 5 or 6 years ago. I know she died suddenly in Abu Dhabi or somewhere. Sorry. I also have the sad duty to inform you of the death of a colleague, Valerie Otter, known as Val, who sadly passed away following a short illness on the 22nd of November. Val worked at the council between 1986 and 2010 as a typing supervisor in the Strategic Housing Services team. Val's funeral was held in Leyland on the 10th of December. I'd like to send my thoughts and condolences to Val's family and friends and former colleagues at this sad time. And I now ask that we all stand for a minute's silence as a mark of respect to our former colleagues. Thank you. Now, I'd like to advise that item 12, the Northwest Mutual Bank item, has been withdrawn from the agenda. It will now be submitted to a future meeting. And also a reminder that the extraordinary council meeting, which had also been arranged for the 14th of January, is now also cancelled. As following the release of the new National Planning Policy Framework, there is no longer a transition window, so the local plan will now go to the 30th of January meeting. Now, depending how we progress today, I may adjourn to take a short comfort break, but we will see how we proceed. We've got a long agenda today. Item 2 is declarations of interest. So, Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Merry Christmas. Item 15, the Waspy winner one. My mother-in-law is a retired nurse and a Waspy woman, so it is a personal, not prejudicial interest.
Okay, Councillor Wise.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, item 15, personal interest.
Councillor Holmes.
That's the same, item 15, personal interest.
Councillor Brooks.
Else.
Sorry, was there anyone else put their hand up?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mine's in item 8, the polling stations. I work at Preston Minster. That's due to become a permanent one.
Councillor Close.
Item 6, personal. Item 6, personal interest. The organisation I work for is a recipient of a grant from the Share Prosperity Fund.
Thank you. Councillor Coupland.
Item 8, the polling station item. Sahara's been a polling station previously, so it's conflict of interest. Thank you.
Councillor Atkins. Councillor Raisbeck.
Item 15, personal interest.
Is there anybody else? Thank you. Are you okay with that? Item 3, minutes of the last meeting of council held on the 17th of October 2024. Are members happy that I sign the minutes as a correct record? Thank you. Item 4 is questions of members of the public. And I am pleased to say that we have received one question. The question is from Miss Bryson of Fulwood Preston, and a copy of her question has been published. Miss Bryson is here with us today. Can I ask you now to direct your question to Councillor Hindle, Miss Bryson? Thank you.
Thank you for having me here today. When I think of a destination city or venue, I think of somewhere I can spend at least a full day sightseeing and studying fabulous architecture and historical buildings or views, visiting a museum or art gallery or two, and then perhaps catch a show or gig. Locally, I can travel to Lancaster, Clitheroe, Chorley, Manchester or Liverpool, further afield, Edinburgh, York, Halifax. Preston doesn't immediately spring to mind as a destination. Since we were granted city status in 2002, we have seen the loss of Preston's main theatre complex in the form of the Guildhall and Charter Theatre, 53 Degrees, the Football Museum and Museum of Lancashire, as well as listed architectural gems and buildings of historical importance. Not only have we physically lost listed buildings in the recent fires, but we have also lost community access to heritage buildings like Arkwright House, the Harris Orphanage and Institute, and the home of Edith Rigby, renowned suffragette of Winkley Square, as they are in private hands and in varying states of repair. It feels like Preston has descended into a managed decline, and we are at risk of becoming a cultural void, with other northwest cities and town streets ahead of us. I do appreciate that there is a plan called Preston 35, and I am aware of your plans within it for the Youth Zone, Harris 25, the Guildhall and Animate. What I've struggled to glean from this is exactly how you produce a cultural renaissance, especially where heritage buildings are concerned. So my question is, what are the council's future plans to enhance the cultural facilities and experiences for the people of Preston and to make Preston a cultural attraction destination for people to visit?
Thank you, Miss Bryson. Councillor Hindle, will you respond, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Miss Bryson, for your question. I'll just start by wishing everyone in the chamber a Merry Christmas. So, the council has been leading a significant level of investment and change in our city's cultural facilities. These changes are coming to fruition next year in 2025, in addition to growing our current offer. In February, the Animate Complex will open the new state-of-the-art entertainment, cinema and leisure scheme, providing a quality offer and reason to visit the city centre. The Harris will reopen following a 16 million redevelopment, creating a community, civic and cultural hub for the communities of Preston, as well as delivering a quality visitor attraction for Preston and Lancashire. The council has launched the Guild Lounge, a 350-seater entertainment venue in the Guildhall, providing an opportunity to showcase touring artists, comedy, live music and local performers. We have a well-established city events programme which continues to grow and develop. So it's attracted 120,000 visitors across this year. Investment and support has been provided to the community-led events, including Preston City Mela, Caribbean Carnival, Windrush Festival, Preston Pride, the Jazz Festival and Preston City Wrestling, showcasing the diversity of the city, driving in footfall to the city centre and growing civic pride in place. This year also saw Radio 2 in the Park come to Preston with a world-class lineup of artists performing and attracting 86,000 visitors to Preston, as well as putting the city on the national map. In addition, the council continues to work and support partners such as the Friends of Winkley Square, Preston Arts Association and others to host an exciting and dynamic programme of activities running throughout the year. Preston Arts and Cultural offer plays an integral role in creating a vibrant city to visit, providing reasons for our residents to come into the city centre and a draw for visitors from across Lancashire and further afield to visit. Preston City Council also helped to save the Ferret, which continues to provide fantastic musical venue for grassroots performers to showcase their talents. The exciting reopening of the Harris and and animate are key milestones in Preston's regeneration and we place culture firmly at the heart of our offer.
Miss Bryson, do you have any supplementary question, please?
Yes. So I was just wondering about particularly heritage buildings. I've read the part about the cultural renaissance, and I can't see anything specific in there about how it mentions entrepreneurial approach in Preston's cultural offer. Does that mean, I'm not sure what that means, but does it mean that you're wanting people to invest in heritage buildings? Because when we have seen heritage buildings invested in recently, and planning permission put in, we've still had fires at the venues, like at Mount Street and obviously on Church Street. And I was just wondering how you are going to encourage these entrepreneurs to actually change things in these buildings and actually make these buildings accessible again.
Thank you. I haven't got a precise answer to that because I know they're all dealt on a case-by-case basis, aren't they? I know that they've come to the council, but often it's quite complicated because of funding and that they have to go and get outside bids. I don't know of any amazing entrepreneurs. I'd like to, if you know of any, send them my way. Basically, I mean, it's tragic. I've seen the Edith Rigby House boarded up only at the weekend when I went to the Winkley Square concert. And it is sad to see such an iconic building just sitting there. But as a council, we have so many demands on us, such as the homeless people and having to provide social housing, but we just don't have money to do everything. So that is why we do have to rely on other people, crowdfunding, for example, or getting funding from external organisations. I feel that we do have great work going on with local artists, such as the 30 artists at the Burley Studios. There is some sort of renaissance there, I would say. Yeah, so last year, Cultural Services engaged with over 60 different artists and organisations. So we are doing work, but not on that huge scale because we just couldn't afford it. Okay.
Miss Bryson, thanks for your questions. All the answers will be sent to you in due course in writing. Okay, thank you very much. Item 5 is questions of members of cabinet members and chairs of committees and representatives of outside bodies. Right, I'll just read the surnames out. I've got Vora, Hull, Thompson, Jewell, Saxena, Iqbal and Holmes. Was there anyone I've missed? Thank you. So, Councillor Vora, please.
Put 20,000 police persons over 14 years. I've had, they then announced that they're going to bring them back in 2019. I've had my car broken into twice over the past 2 years, and the police did have the resources to come and have a look, take fingerprints, anything like that at all. Now that we have a new government, what new proposals have been made to help the community to keep us safe, to keep my car safe, etc.? Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for your question. Obviously, sorry your car's been broken into twice. Sorry for having to relive all the bad memories of that. I think every councillor here will I think every councillor here will obviously understand the issues we've had, obviously facing crime, not just within Preston but across the UK. Obviously, the police numbers were cut by 20,000 since 2010, and obviously then Boris Johnson announced through big grand gestures that they're going to recruit 20,000, which was really just replacing the 20,000 that were previously cut. Again, we've obviously still seen crime still hasn't really returned to 2010 levels. So what this government has announced on Tuesday was additional funding for 13,000 new police neighbourhoods and police officers across the UK, which is on top of the extra 20,000 that Boris Johnson previously announced, and also an additional 140 million for counter-terrorism police too. This obviously help achieve the UK's priorities in terms of reducing crime and numbers, and obviously making sure that people like yourself, Councillor Vora, have their car seen to, and hopefully those criminals caught and banged up in jail, but as well achieving the priorities such as Safer Streets campaigns, and again responding to the residents when they need to. So I'm hoping this really welcome additional funding will not just benefit the UK but also benefit the people of Preston, and hopefully we'll see a reduction in crime, and hopefully people across Preston will feel safer. So yes, I think it is a good news item. So thank you very much.
Is there a supplementary? Councillor Vora? No. Councillor Thompson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is to the leader. So, as we know, Preston is a big area and it extends well into the rural areas. And there are a good number of family farms in the area. Do you share my concerns that farmers who will be suffering under the latest inheritance tax sweep announced by the government, do you share my concerns about their mental health, and what has PCC got to offer farmers in support during these difficult times?
Thank you, Councillor Thompson, and Merry Christmas. And thank you once again for the kind wishes from the Conservative group when I was quite poorly. It's much appreciated. Yeah, I mean, my understanding of this is it's a national policy issue. So obviously it's the Labour government's position to try and obviously raise taxes from people who are a little better off. But I do agree that that should be done in a way that's proportionate, in a way that's going to obviously be done in a way that's sensible. And I think we have got the balance right, because obviously we do need to pay for public services. My understanding is it's when you get to £1 million that this tax rate kicks in. I mean, you know, come on, I think most people in Preston would love to have £1 million of assets, and obviously most people here don't. We're a very working class community. So, you know, I think the best thing to do is probably write and lobby government about any specific circumstances, but I do think it is right that those who've got a little of broader shoulders do pay a little more. And obviously there are elements of landowners in our community that do have a bit more money than other people, and they should make that contribution. Thank you very much.
Have you a supplementary?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and actually can I comment on the answer rather than ask another question, which I think I'm allowed to do under the Constitution.
It's a question you should be asking, a supplementary question to the response you've received, not a comment, really.
Oh, I understood under the Constitution, Mr. Mayor, but your ruling is...
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Well, I'll agree to disagree and sit down.
Look, it's Christmas. Carry on.
Go on, Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, my concern about this is that £1 million isn't a great deal of money, and farmers produce stuff that is actually not at the cost of production. So they don't really have the money. If you can soon run up £1 million bill on a farm, you've got to have about 150 acres to make a living at it. And when there's multi-generations on, you need probably a bigger farm So they very quickly, as soon as the main man dies and they want to be taxed, there isn't enough money in the business to cover the tax bill. So the farms are going to have to be broken up. And I've had there was a meeting the other week, different conservative constituency had a meeting the other week, and I was quite disturbed to hear that some older farmers there have been contemplating suicide to get past this tax. And I don't know what on earth the government's doing. The numbers are completely
Councillor
wrong.
Thompson, are you trying to make it into a question at some point?
Yeah, I'm trying to make it into a question, Mr. Mayor. So would you agree with me that the government has got its figures wrong?
I think with respect, Councillor Thompson, there's certain things that the national government are responsible for, and there's certain things that the local government are responsible for. And as a council, we are not responsible for national taxation policy. However, you know, I'm happy to look at anything. I mean, obviously, it's distressing in what you're saying about the mental health issues of the farmers concerned. And I think we can have a conversation about how we could potentially support that. I really do think conversations with MPs is what's needed. You know, it's really outside our pay grade a bit, this situation, you know, around farmers and the livelihoods and the rest of it. But I mean, what I would say in terms of the assets they have, farmers and landowners are much better off than the vast majority of people in our community. So, you know, so I do think that it's right when we have difficult economic circumstances that because they do have broader shoulders, they do actually make a bit more of a contribution. But I do think it needs to be done in a way that obviously is sensible and proportionate. And I think the government are trying to find that balance. But I'm happy to have any conversation or, you know, link you up to the two Labour MPs we have now for a conversation if that's helpful. Well, thank you.
Councillor Hull, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is to the leader of the council. I must say, Matthew, it's good to see you back on your feet and well again. But it's been confirmed recently by the new government that proposals for a new hospital in the Preston area are going forward. Can Councillor Brown, as the leader, inform our council what measures are being taken to ensure that a hospital presence in our own local authority area of Preston is maintained and improved?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Hull. Thanks once again for your really kind wishes. Obviously, good to be back and good to be enjoying Christmas once again. There was a doubt about that a few months back, but here I am. Yeah, in terms of what we're doing, obviously myself and the MP, Mark Hendrick, we're both on the same page with this. We do believe that as a community that has lower income, diverse communities who suffer disproportionately from health issues, that it's essential that the hospital remains within the local authority boundary. And that basically means that both myself and Mark Hendrick MP are arguing for basically a rebuild at Royal Preston. So on the Sharrow Green site, we want a rebuild of the hospital. And obviously we are aware and convinced of the push to have services in the community, but we do need that hospital in Preston because the reality is people in the less well-off areas in the inner east of Preston, for example, many of them don't have a car. They find it really difficult to travel to a new facility in the more prosperous areas, which are some of the proposals coming forward. So we're both lobbying the minister concerned. I believe it's Karen Smythe MP that the hospital will remain within the boundary. And it's really important. It's also important as a big employer because how many people in our communities work in Royal Preston Hospital? How many supply Royal Preston Hospital? You know, so it's essential we actually retain that hospital facility within Preston, and that's what we're going to be arguing for. So thank you very much for the question, Councillor Hull. Next questions.
Yeah, have a supplementary, Councillor Hull. Councillor Saxena, next question, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is to the leader of the council. I think most people are aware that in the last few months, bad though they were before, the bus services in Preston have reached a new time pit in their effectiveness and punctuality. We're getting people have been waiting an hour and a half for buses at peak period to get home from work. My own sister depends on them massively. And she's a single lady in her 60s, has been having to walk in the dark to get home because the buses have just not turned up. With an ONS study due to take place within the next few months, I wonder if the leader give us some idea of what is likely to be in the pipeline over improvement of bus services in Preston and the surrounding area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Saxon. Obviously, we await the scrutiny task force looking at this. I mean, my own view is just asking bus companies nicely if they're going to improve services isn't work. We need regulation. So obviously, we're going to be pushing for a Greater Manchester style bus franchising arrangement. The Conservative County Council is currently resisting that. This is something that we're going to be pushing for, including hopefully a devolution deal that's going to be beneficial to our communities. But I think we need to look at what councils did in the 60s, 70s and 80s and whether we can actually have our own bus service that's owned by the council, the municipality, and we decide as the politicians which communities can be served and have some say over the routes and the prices and the efficiency of it, really. If you look at Greater Manchester, it's expected there will be a 30% increase in bus travel in the next few years by 2030. And the reason that is improving is because they're taking control of the bus network democratically and increasing numbers. So my own view with many things is that skirting around the edges isn't going to work. The deregulation and privatisation of bus services has been an absolute disaster. And we need to, with new powers as an authority, move back into the realms of owning bus companies and obviously having control democratically over what they provide. I hope that answers your question, Councillor Saxena. Thank you.
Any supplementary question to that, John? Okay. Councillor Patel next, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can the Cabinet Member for Environment and Community Safety provide an update on the conditions on Moor Park since the successful Radio 2 in the park event? Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for your question. So obviously, we've had a really successful event on Radio 2, on Moor Park at Radio 2 Live, but obviously it has left the park not in the absolute best condition. Obviously, there's positives and negatives to everything. When you hold an event where, as Councillor Hindle says, there was 86,000 people, attended, there's obviously going to be some kind of downsides to it. But the park is looking in a lot better state at this moment in time. Yeah, there are some patches of mud and where grass hasn't really sort of taken hold yet, but the actual park itself is looking a lot better. The BBC actually have paid for a number of elements for repairs. So, for example, some of the bollards and some of the benches and some places where the tarmac has been ruined. So they've paid for that. And as well, we've obviously levelled out and filled in some of the ruts that have been left from the actual events, and the BBC have compensated us from that. And then on top of that, obviously, the main issue we've had as well has been the footballers have been affected on Moor Park. Now, I know we're in the winter period where there's not a lot of fixtures taking place because obviously, in these winter months, the pitches can get wrecked after just one game with the ground being sodden. But obviously, this council has created 2 new pitches on the sort of the cricket side of Moor Park and Blackpool Road. And obviously, we've had some feedback when before a lot of the fixtures have been cancelled, that the footballers seem to quite like those new pitches. So again, this council has reacted to that. We're making sure that obviously when the football season in its full flow, that fixtures aren't being cancelled. We're still facilitating young people to be able to play football. So yeah, even though there's been some negatives about it, we have reacted to that. We've done the most we can working with the BBC, and obviously the park will hopefully back up to its full beauty very shortly. But again, I just wanted to report on the work we've done to ensure that as many people as possible can use the park as much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Do you have any supplementary to that, Councillor Patel?
No, thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Jewell, please.
My question, Mr. Mayor, is to the leader in relation to the government's recent white paper on the devolution bill. And within that document, there's a figure 1, and it shows in dark green, those existing mayoral authority areas, York and North Yorkshire, the North East, etc. And in a light green, it shows those areas where in the text it says devolution agreement in place. So you've got that for Hull and East Yorkshire and Greater Lincolnshire and Lancashire. So can I ask the leader if he is aware of the agreement that is already in place?
Yeah, Councillor Jewell, my understanding, this is the agreement that's been signed by both Lancashire County Council, Blackburn with Darwin and Blackpool. And obviously that has just gone through the House of Commons and they got assent. But obviously there's a debate about how we should deepen devolution and whether we should look at having a Merv Lancashire, and obviously whether we should look at whether we reorganise a county based on new councils linked to that, so we get the maximum powers available. So that debate is ongoing. It kind of anticipates a question I was expecting, because what we need to have is we need to have an adult conversation with all our leaders across Lancashire about new councils, the kind of devolution we want, and kind of like try to get agreement, because at the moment we seem to have MPs, council leaders who are suggesting a number of things and not talking enough. So I'm going to propose to the Lancashire leaders meeting, where we have all 15 council leaders there, that we actually have a conversation about how we do this, because I think it's too much of an opportunity to miss some of the powers we're going to get. We talk about bus regulation, we talk about Great British Energy, we talk about how to tackle the environment, how to tackle worklessness. To do that, we need a very strong devolution deal. So in terms of the factual aspect of your question, my understanding, the references to this devolution deal that's been signed just between Lancashire, Blackburn and Blackpool. But obviously, it's our perspective, I think, on this side of the chain, we want to go a lot further. And to do that, we've got to do that sensibly, including looking at how we reorganise the county. Thank you.
You have a supplementary, Councillor Jewell?
Yes, please, Mr. Mayor. So I think what you're saying there, Councillor Brown, is that there's an agreement that's not an agreement because it's not been agreed with the districts. And really, and how much influence are the districts really going to have to change the agreement that quite clearly is already in place and expressed in the white paper?
Councillor Jewell, I do know that you do read the Lancashire Evening Post, so you've seen the developments that are taking place. Obviously, we're at a stage now where we have a deal, which is, I believe, the stage 1 deal. Many of us believe we should have the strongest deal, and to do that, we need to have a mayor. And to get the mayor, and to get the deepest devolution possible to benefit our communities, the government are basically saying we need to look at potentially reorganising local government. So that's the stage we're at. Obviously, this council needs to have a debate about that, and I'm sure that'll happen soon. But I think our Labour group do want to take advantage of these opportunities. But what we want to do is do it through dialogue, because at the moment there's 15 council leaders, often with a different opinion. So if we're going to do this and get the strongest powers, we need to all get in a room and have a conversation and be adults in the room and come out with something that's going to work for all of us. We've been trying this for a decade. But it's too much of an opportunity to miss, because we're going to be the poorer cousins of Greater Manchester and Merseyside. So in answer to your question, I think you're referring to this first deal that we do have, but we want to go a lot deeper. And obviously we want to do it and we want to look at whether we can have new councils, but we want to do it sensibly. And I do also think this size requirement of 500,000, you're talking about regional government there. I think we prefer something a little smaller because it's a bit closer to the people. So I'm happy to have a chat with you about it after the council if you want, because I'd be interested to hear your thoughts as a group really about what we do. Because, when it comes to it, I want the whole council to back a position. We're going to be coming forward with a position, and if we can get a consensus, I think that'll be a positive thing really. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Holmes, please.
Thank you. My question largely overlaps this. I wanted to ask again about devolution and really the status of the discussions in Lancashire, but also the impact of reorganisation on Preston residents.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Holmes. I'm quite pleased you've raised it again, to be honest, because it's a really important issue. Preston Council's 50 years old. 50 years old. It's unlikely to exist, I think. Adrian's shaking his head. I thought it was 50 years old. So it's hundreds of years old. Yeah.
About culture just before.
I think as a district authority, I believe it's about 50 years old from 1974, obviously a long time ago. So obviously, changes in the air. The government is very clear that for us to get the maximum powers, we really need to look at having an elected mayor of Lancashire. Who will that be? Who knows? I'm sure there'll be lots of people interested in that job. But also linked to that, we need to look at how we organise ourselves as councils and that we move to unitary authorities, because it doesn't make sense sometimes that the city does planning and economic development and the county does schools, right? So we need to get around that. But I do think we need to have an adult conversation with all leaders and MPs as well and other stakeholders. And basically the answer to the question, Sarah, is I'm going to be proposing that at Lancashire leaders, because whether it's with the LGA supporters or whoever, we've got to sit down and get the best deal for Lancashire. And that means we've got to bite the devolution bullet. And to do that, we've got to find a way forward we can agree on how we reorganise local government potentially, because we won't get the top powers if we don't do that. And in this country, devolution, we're one of the most centralised countries in the European Union. And even with these devolution powers, we're still going to be pretty centralised, but we can do a lot more for our communities. So, yeah, just warning really, if that's the right word, that this debate will be coming forward, and obviously the council will be taking a view at some point in the future, and obviously our group will be taking a view. But I'm of the view now that we've got to grab these powers by both hands and try to have a conversation about how we do it sensibly and take as many people with us. That is adult politics, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Is there a supplementary, councillor? Thank you. Councillor Iqbal, please. Oh, excuse me, 1 second, councillor. Just for information to the leader and others, Preston got its first charter in 1179 by Henry II. In 1979, 800 years later, the Queen visited and the Queen Elizabeth II visited, and there's a signed picture in the Mayor's Parlour. For more history, I'll show councillors round that it's a 10 quid a head for my charity. Councillor Iqbal. What? I don't think, were you around in 1979, councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question to Councillor Wise, community member for Community Wealth Building. Well, could you tell us the update on the recent fires that we had in town centre? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Iqbal. That's a really timely question, because later today, the council is, or soon after today, the council is issuing a press release addressing this issue. So it is concerning that we keep having some buildings set on fire in the city centre. The fire in Church Street occurred on Tuesday, the 12th of November in the evening. Officers worked hard with the emergency services when the fire occurred. And after the fire was put out, the priority was to ascertain if there were any people in the building, because previously some people had been sleeping rough in there. Fortunately, no bodies, dead or alive, were found there. But it was a difficult process because they had to be careful with the demolition when they were actually looking for people to make sure they didn't actually have the building collapsing on people there. And search dogs were used to see if anyone was there. The demolition of the whole building was required, and a demolition contractor was on site on the Thursday evening. On the following Saturday, the 16th of November, when the emergency services were satisfied that there were no bodies within the building, the police basically asked Preston City Council to take over and supervise the situation, supervise the demolition. And at that stage, the demolition had to stop in the evening, and the council instructed the demolition contractors to return to work on Monday, the 18th of November, in order to allow the structural engineer to be present on site. The council made arrangements for additional security to be put in place so that we didn't have anybody entering a dangerous building that was in danger of collapse. And our community safety manager and the police and community support officers visited the sites on their rounds over that weekend. I'm pleased to say that no further trouble was reported. Unfortunately, a listed building at 131A Church Street had to be demolished as it was structurally unsafe. This contained a hot food takeaway, but the upper floors were not occupied. Dealing with this has had a huge impact on the council's work, both at the response stage, led by the emergency services, and the recovery phase, led by the council. And I'm really pleased and impressed by the efforts from everyone involved at Preston City Council, as well as the emergency services response. We're now assessing our costs and we're working to recoup our costs from the landowner, working with our legal and finance teams. As a last resort, we'll seek to place a land charge on the property. And we're also looking at what lessons can be learnt. The council is also liaising with the owners of the former St Joseph's Orphanage, Mount Street Hospital, and College House, Edith Rigby House, Winkley Square, to ensure that important listed structures are secured and protected. The owners of St Joseph's must demolish a number of buildings affected by a previous fire as they're structurally unsafe, and this will take place in the next few weeks. These buildings were approved for demolition under an earlier planning permission for residential development. The listed chapel and tower is to be retained and converted. However, the demolition's been held up due to the presence of asbestos on the site, which is being overseen by the Health and Safety Executive. Our Community Safety Manager, Alison Hatton, has done a fantastic job in dealing with the site security and ASB on this site and in the general area. The owners have been served with a community protection notice, and the demolition contractor has been served a community protection warning after people were witnessed entering into these dangerous buildings. Site safety is the owner's and the contractor's responsibility. What the council has now done is it set up a task force, and that's what our press release is about, which will coordinate action on empty and derelict buildings and sites which are causing problems in the city centre, liaising with police and Lancashire Fire Rescue Service. The focus of this group will be to make sure that owners take responsibility for ensuring their buildings are secure and safe, and to encourage them to put them into active use. If owners don't do this, then the council will use all the enforcement powers available and will encourage them to sell them onto more responsible owners and developers. And lastly, if I just say that we won't tolerate the behaviour in developers and building owners who don't take responsibility for the safety of their property seriously, putting people and some buildings at risk. So, as in its sense it relates to the question from the member of public, as some of these buildings are part of Preston's heritage, we think owners have a duty to protect the buildings of historic importance, and the council, as I've already said, will take formal action if this isn't happening. So thank you for the question.
Is there any supplementary? Councillor Hull, do you want to speak about this or ask a question about
It's
it?
just one point, if I may, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, it's Christmas.
Well, I'm pleased that you bring to light the idea that people should secure premises, but one of the problems that I have and which people have expressed to me is the police investigation of arson in these cases, of which there have been several. Are you confident as a cabinet member that the police have carried out as thorough an investigation into arson as they might have done? And going forward, is that something that we are going to make sure that the police do before the job is given back to the council, to make sure that they get the evidence in a very difficult thing to prove, arson, on any given premise going forward?
Thank you, Councillor Hull. I mean, that's a really difficult question to answer, to be honest. I mean, particularly in the light of what we've just heard in an earlier question about the fact we haven't got sufficient police officers at the moment to be doing all the investigating they should be, which is why we actually want the police, Lancashire Constabulary, to be part of the task group so that we can be ensuring that there is the evidence gathered, and when they can, they do pursue prosecutions of those that have caused these fires, which obviously are causing enormous damage and huge cost to the council and to the property owners. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. That completes questions of cabinet members, I believe. So item 6 on the agenda. Item 6 is a report on the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. Councillor Brown, are you moving this report?
I am, Mr. Mayor. The information is in front of all members. So obviously this is an update, and all the report is asking for is that we note the update. Obviously, I don't want this meeting to go on for too long and ruin people's afternoons longer than we need. So the information is there, but obviously we have a very positive story to tell in terms of shared prosperity. Some highlights, for example, are 32 playing sports sites have been identified to improve facilities for young people across the city. In the last 3 months, a total of 27 sports tournaments have been organised through the funding, with almost 450 participants. In the last 3 months, almost 1,500 court hours were booked for community tennis in Preston Parks, and that includes more than 340 court bookings for 3 sessions, and obviously a lot of that on Moor Park. We have delivered junior family tournaments with 140 participants, along with a family fun day that engaged 54 people, and a wheelchair tournament that was organised throughout the summer. So obviously that's brilliant in terms of disabled members of our community taking part in events and tournaments. We have a community volunteering fund, which supported 19 organisations with grant funding. And there's been more than 415 volunteering opportunities supported and almost 200 initiatives with volunteers delivering services. Preston also has a new voluntary centre, and through the employment support programmes, 144 adults so far have engaged with key worker support services by the end of October 2024, and 133 economically inactive young people have also been helped. So this is a huge amount of investment, Mr. Mayor. It's £5.5 million from Shared Prosperity, many programmes which are listed. 1.348 million is being committed to deliver net zero by 2030, and we're collectively investing 2,026,000 in community wealth building initiatives, including growing the social economy. I personally am quite excited about Preston Digital Cooperative, which is in the process of being established, and this will see a cooperative enterprise being established, of which the council will have a major stake, which will provide free public Wi-Fi for residents, beamed out from many of our community facilities within the less well-off communities in Preston. And obviously to tackle digital inclusion and put more money in people's pockets, that will do that. Also provide free and low-cost devices for people as well. And we've identified 5 venues so far to deliver that service. We want that to advance. That is a very, very powerful community wealth building expression this council is putting forward through this money. So that's it, Mr. Mayor. It's been noted. I've given a quick overview of some of the stuff we're doing with this money. Obviously, a lot's being done and many people are benefiting. So I commend the report to the Chamber. Thank you very much.
Have we got a seconder? Thank you, councillor. Are there any questions on this report? All those in favour of this report, please show. Thank you. Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you. Item 7 is the mid-year Treasury Management Monitoring Report 2024-25. Councillor Rawlinson, are you moving the report?
Thank you. Yes, this is one of the Treasury Management reports that we need to take each year. One of several, of course, according to the Code of Practice. We also have to nominate scrutiny for these reports and actions, and we do that through the Audit Committee, of course, who carry out really good work on this throughout the year, along with the external auditors and our advisors. The Treasury indicators have been slightly amended to reflect that we don't need to borrow in 24-25, and also slippage of the capital programme into 25-26. We may not need to borrow in 25-26 either, due to additional income from the City Deal agreement, additional council tax income, increased Treasury returns, and delaying the borrowing gives a favourable position on the budget, as we do not need to fund the interest on the borrowing cost. So I'll thank the Audit Committee for their input on this, and we can support it.
Is there a seconder for the report? Leader, yeah. You wish to speak? Are there any questions or comments? All in favour of this report, please show. Thank you. Anyone against? Any abstentions? Thank you. Item 8, review of polling. This is a report on a review of polling districts and polling places. An alteration was also published on this item on Tuesday. Councillor Rawlinson, will you be moving the report with the alteration?
There is an alteration been tabled, and I can explain it if anybody wants me to, but it's fairly straightforward. Obviously, this is something we have to do. We have to publish this by a certain date. Whether any of this will ever be put into action now is open to question, of course, but there could be by-elections, or obviously nothing's set in stone yet, but it's something we have to do anyway.
Thank you. Is there a seconder, please? Thanks, Councillor Wise. Are there any comments or questions from anyone? All in favour, please show. Thank you. All again? Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you. Item 9. Item 9 is a report on changes to the scheme of delegation for planning decisions. Councillor Afzal, will you be moving this report?
Mr. Mayor. This report seeks approval to alter the current scheme of delegation for planning decisions by officers to ensure the local planning authority uses its resources effectively and efficiently. The amendments made to the scheme of delegation in the past have assisted with the government's drive of speeding up the planning process. The current proposed amendments would refine the process further by widening the delegation scheme to include applications submitted under Section 73 of the Town and Country Planning Act. These applications seek approval to amend a development or vary or remove conditions of a planning permission as new issues may arise after planning permission has been granted. These applications are often uncomplicated, and for major sites, the original application has already been considered by the Planning Committee. Furthermore, it is important to note the reconsideration of the whole development is not possible, and if the amendment variation is acceptable, the original planning permission remains intact and unamended. The new permission sits alongside the original permission, and the developer must decide which permission to implement. At present, an average of 2 Section 73 applications are considered by the Planning Committee each month, which means that these often uncomplicated applications demand more time from officers and can often add an hour or more to committee meetings for a development that has already been considered by members previously under the original application. Allowing these applications to be delegated would enable them to be dealt with in a quicker time frame, give officers more time to prepare committee reports for new complex proposals not previously considered, and allow members to focus on the more significant applications in committee, thereby making better use of officers' and members' time, and would improve the overall efficiency of the decision-making process. In addition to the above proposed amendment, the scheme of delegation also provides the Director of Development and Housing an option to refer an application to the Planning Committee for a decision. These are often applications that have attracted a high level of public interest or raise contentious issues, or where issues of probity are raised. It is proposed that this option is amended to include consultation with the Cabinet Member for Planning and Regulation to provide more transparency, accountability and consistency in decision-making. To conclude, it is considered that the proposed changes are necessary in order to ensure that the Council can deliver a planning service which continues to respond to the Government's designation regime. The proposed changes are considered to strike an appropriate balance between the need to provide local accountability and transparency and an efficient and effective planning service that delivers high quality and timely decisions. Thank you.
We have a seconder for this report, please. Thank you, Councillor Hull. Are there any comments or questions on this report? Move to the vote. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. Any abstentions? Anyone against? Thank you. Very quiet today. Good. Item 10. Item 10 is a report on an honorary alderman nomination. Councillor Rawlinson, will you be moving this report?
I'm very pleased to propose David Borrell to go forward as an honorary alderman. There's a few people who deserve it more after a lifetime in politics, dedicated to the Labour Party. So I hope you'll all attend when that happens. But I believe that any other recent retirees indicated that they didn't want to become an alderman at this time. So we just go forward with David.
Thank you, Councillor Rawlinson. Have we got a seconder for this, please? Thank you, Councillor Brown. Any comments? All in favour, please show. Thank you. Anyone against? Any abstentions? Thank you. Item 11 is a report on the proposed calendar of meetings for 2025-2026. Councillor Rawlinson, will you be moving this report?
I'll move it, Chair.
Have we got a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Brown. Anybody want to speak on it? Councillor Riseback, were you just scratching your head? Thank you. Sorry. Item 12. Oh, sorry, we have to vote on it. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. Anyone against? Any abstentions? No? Good. Carried. Thank you. Item 12. As stated earlier, item 12 is now withdrawn. Item 13 is a report on the localised council tax support scheme. The report was not available at the time the agenda was published. However, I am willing to accept it as an urgent item, as a decision is required at this council meeting so that whichever scheme is approved can be included in the budget for the 2025-26 financial year, and the scheme can be incorporated in the annual council tax billing exercise. Councillor Rawlinson, please.
Get your austerity bingo cards ready. There's an extra one for you. In 2013, during austerity, the Conservative and Liberal Democrat coalition scrapped council tax benefits, a scheme which meant people on benefits did not pay council tax and which was fully funded by the government. They passed the decision and the funding to councils for council tax support, but not before cutting this funding by £1 billion. This was a political choice to take £1 billion from the pockets of the poorest to pay back the richest who caused the 2008 financial crash. This left councils with the heartbreaking decision on whether to make the poorest people in society pay local taxes for the first time since the poll tax. This vicious and cowardly policy was later exacerbated by rolling this funding into councils' general grants, which were subsequently reduced to almost nothing. During the 5 years of the Conservative and Lib Dem coalition, in the 5 years following this, the council were forced to undertake 3 major savings drives to avoid bankruptcy from government cuts. We had to give away the leisure centres, the bus station, the Guildhall, slash funding to parks, sport, the arts, and many statutory services. Funding the cut to council tax benefit ourselves was simply not possible. But it was one of the hardest decisions we made during austerity. Obviously, I can talk all day about the effect this has had on the council, but the people out there have suffered greatly from this policy. Many now have debts stacked up for years, trapped in a cycle of deductions from benefits and their wages. Many others try to pay these bills. They pay them before eating or heating their homes. The policy is unforgivable. 500,000 premature deaths from austerity, and who knows at the amount of human suffering. I should be proud to say that we can finally reinstate 100% council tax support, but it's a bittersweet decision. It should never have happened. Those responsible and those still supporting the parties responsible need to take a long, hard look at themselves. We can afford this now because our policies mean that Preston is growing and thriving through our work on community wealth building and the city deal. Our share prosperity with those in greatest need is still the hardest task, but there is only this party that's trying to do that. I hope you can support us.
Is there a seconder for this report, please? Councillor Brown, thanks. Have we any questions or comments anywhere? Yes, Councillor Brown.
I just want to commend Councillor Rawlinson for this brave decision. It costs, it's not easy, but 2013 was really the year that the Tory Liberal coalition brought the backs of the poor. And that was also in Preston as well. Not only did we have this draconian measuring introduced, and obviously we never wanted to do it, but we didn't have the money not to do it, if we're honest about it, but we also had the poll tax as well. So it was a real double whammy for those less well off. Just in terms of benefits, this will ensure that the poorest in society, many disabled who do pay 20% council tax now, will actually have an extra £26 a month in their pockets, over £300 a year. And to those individuals, it might not seem a lot of money to many people here, but it's a lot to them. So I'm absolutely delighted and proud of Martin. I'm proud of this Labour Council for actually reversing this evil. It's an evil policy we've had to live with for 12 years. And obviously we'll have less off people in our community, or a little better off as we approach Christmas. Obviously it takes effect from next April, but obviously after that it's going to benefit them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Darby, thanks. Can't see his name.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's very interesting. I thought you might have changed your tune. We've heard earlier today about some very difficult decisions that the Labour government is having to make. We've talked in this chamber before about the winter fuel allowance. We've talked about the 2-child cap. And yet when it's difficult decisions that other people have made previously, they're absolutely evil. We will be supporting this, but I just wanted to say that there are difficult decisions all around.
Are you asking a question, Councillor Potter? Right. In favour of this report, please show. Thank you. Anyone against? Too late now, sorry. Any abstentions? Right. Thank you. Item 14 is notification of changes to the membership of committees. Are there any changes to be reported? No. Item 15. Notice of motion submitted by Councillor Van Merlo, Waspy Women. Women Against State Pension Inequality. Councillor Van Merlo. Merlo. I beg your pardon.
So thank you for taking the time to reading my motion. Women Against State Pension Inequality, usually referred to as WASPy women. So why are women poorer than men? Is it because women are not as clever or as able as men, or are women less motivated or lazy? Or is it due to fewer opportunities, inequality, or an imbalance of power? In 1976, married women were not eligible for carers allowance. It was their duty to care for a husband. 1986, the policy was deemed unlawful. 10 years to overturn inequality in the European Court. In the UK, top 100 companies, there are more men called Dave than there are women altogether. Women outperform men educationally at every single level, from high school to PhD, but still get paid less. 1950s women have faced many challenges, and many have had fewer opportunities to secure their financial stability for retirement. Now add in another 6 years before they're eligible for their state pension, at for some 18 months' notice. Is that fair? This forced more women into poverty, poor health, and early death. A disgrace the way these women are treated, and they deserve compensation. And so I don't forget, I accept Labour's amendment, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, councillor. Is this motion seconded?
It is, Mr. Mayor.
Do you wish to speak on it now?
I reserve the right to speak, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Have we accepted the Labour amendment? So the substantive motion includes the Labour amendment. Do we have a speaker? Councillor Wise, you wish to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for that speech, which I agreed with, and thank you for accepting our amendment. As we now all know, Liz Kendall, the Secretary of State for Work and Pensions, told the House of Commons earlier this week that the WASPI women will not receive any compensation. She said that given the vast majority of women knew the state pension age was increasing, that the government does not believe paying a flat rate to all women at a cost of up to £10.5 billion would be a fair or proportionate use of taxpayers' money. The Secretary of State did recognise that maladministration had taken place, because she said that we are determined to learn all the lessons to ensure this type of maladministration never happens again. I'm very disappointed with this statement, and obviously I'm pleased that the amendment's been accepted, because what we want is the government to rethink again, and also to allow MPs to vote on the issue. I am a WASPI woman, and I have to say that when the Act was introduced in 1995 by the then Conservative government, I probably wasn't aware of it, aware of the implications like so many other women. I was 40 at the time and I wasn't thinking about my retirement. When the coalition government in 2011 decided to bring forward the date when many women would be affected, I also probably wasn't thinking about my retirement then either, again, like so many other women. And I didn't really think about the implications of what the government had done. The fact is, as the Parliamentary and Health Service Ombudsman in his report in 2021 said, that the DWP failed to take adequate account of the need for targeted and tailored and individually tailored information to women, and failed to provide this information, and this was deemed a maladministration. For some women, the combined effect of the 1995 Act and the 2011 Act meant an increase in state pension age of up to 6 years. Particularly badly affected were women born between April 1950 and April 1955. As the Ombudsman put in his first report on the issue, the DWP's own research in 2003-04 found that only 43% of all women affected by the changes knew their state pension age was 65, or between 60 and 65 years. So it's incorrect for the Secretary of State to say that most women knew of the changes. Research in 2005 and 2006 found that 38% of women aged 40 to 49, born 1956 to 1966, thought they could draw their state pension at 60, when their actual state pension age was 65. In 2006, the DWP first proposed a direct mail to women whose state pension age was between 60 and 65. It then failed to act promptly on that proposal or to give due weight to how much time had already been lost since the 1995 Pensions Act. This was also deemed maladministration. Unpublished DWP research from 2007 found 85% of women aged 48 to 59 knew the state pension was going to be equalised, but many women didn't know when it was going to happen. The research also found that 50% of women whose state pension had risen to between 60 and 65, and 36% of women whose state pension had risen to 65, still thought it was 60. Complainants have also told the Ombudsman that the Government Gateway website incorrectly stated the pension age for women was 60 as late as 2016. In March of this year, the Ombudsman published another report on the WASPI women issue. In that report, the Ombudsman says, and I quote, "When we find that complainants have suffered injustice as a result of maladministration, we would usually recommend their injustice is remedied in line with our principles of remedy. When making recommendations for financial remedy, we take account of our guidance on financial remedy and severity of injustice scale. Whilst it is unusual for organisations we investigate not to accept and act on our recommendations, we've got no powers to compel them to comply. When an organisation does not comply with our recommendations, we can lay the report before Parliament so that Parliament can act to protect citizens' rights. What the DWP has told the Ombudsman during the investigation leads them to strongly doubt that it would provide a remedy. Complainants have also doubted the DWP's ability or intent to provide a remedy. Given that the scale of the DWP's maladministration and the urgent need for remedy, the Ombudsman took the rare but necessary step of asking Parliament to intervene, and so laid the report before them. And I just think that we as a council are now asking for the Secretary of State to reconsider. The DWP, the Ombudsman did recognise that there was a significant number of women born in the 1950s who'd suffered injustice because of the maladministration in the DWP's communication about the 1995 Pensions Act. And they really would have liked the DWP to remedy their injustice. So what the Ombudsman also says is that they think that compensation should be given at the level 4 range, which would involve spending between £3.5 billion and £10.5 billion of public money, although they understand that not everybody has suffered injustice. But they say the principles of remedy acknowledge that public bodies need to balance responding appropriately to people's complaints and acting proportionately within available resources. But they also say, importantly, that finite resources should not be used as an excuse for failing to provide a fair remedy. So I hope that everybody will support this motion. Thank you.
Councillor Potter, do you wish... A second, do you wish to speak now?
No one else left.
Oh, hang on, sorry. Yes, Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We had actually looked at this and then we decided to put in a notice of motion, but the one that we'd written was very similar to Councillor Wise's. So we were happy to take that out of the picture. And I think it's only right that justice is served and that these women are allowed the pension that they should have got and the compensation. I'm a bit surprised that people like Starmer and Rayner and Kendall have actually come out against it. I can't understand that, but anyway, that's not for me to talk about. It's I'm here to support the motion, so I'm happy to do that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Councillor Thompson. Councillor Potter as seconder. I'm going to bring, if there's no more comments or questions or debate, you can come in and then the The motion submitted by Councillor Van Mierlo will have the right to come back. Councillor Akhtar, please.
Thank you. I'm just going to help the colleague across the room understand why the leader of the Labour Party indicates that they weren't able in a position, and it's not one I'd agree with, but why they're not in a position to be able to support the compensation scheme proposed, and that is largely connected to the fact that the last administration in government, Conservatives, neither planned for nor forecast in honouring the advice that was given to compensate. In addition to which, of course, there was a significant black hole of £20 billion plus that we already know and are having to suffer the consequences of. So I just wanted to clarify that, as I do in support the motion and the amendment and the motion overall. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Akhtar. Councillor, anybody else want to say anything? Right. Do you want to, as seconded, do you want to speak, Councillor Potter?
I do, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much. Firstly, thank you very much to Julie for her wonderful first motion to this council, something she cares so much about, and it was just sheer surprise that obviously this came up this week, but it does mean it's been very, very topical. I'd also like to thank Councillor Wise for her amendment, which on the whole, despite adding a few little bits of politics and taking a few little bits out, is generally very good and strengthens the motion. I would also like to commend Councillor Thompson and the Conservative group to do what their national party is not, and is in supporting this, because currently the Conservatives do not support WASPI women getting compensation. But we can't move past the fact that this is a disgraceful decision by the Labour government. And it is interesting to note how many Labour councillors would have spoken on this issue if it wasn't a Labour government that was introducing it. And the problem you're going to have, and it's a horrendous precedent you're setting, for the first time in history, an independent ombudsman's report will not be enacted. And you talked about hanging heads in shames and evil acts. And I've said in previous ones, you guys have to realise you are not only the good guys in your own story. And I know personally women that have been devastated by this decision and have been living with this decision for many, many years. And again, just to correct some of the facts in here, is that the maladministration took place under a previous Labour government, and the Ombudsman report, which has been ignored, took place in the last Conservative administration. So I understand the politics you're adding in your amendment, but they are the two key dates that are really important in the maladministration and the Ombudsman report, which is what the current motion is about. But I'm delighted you guys are doing it. I hope the spirit of rebellion within you will go to your MPs, will go to your government, because you're probably going to have a lot more of this to deal with. And we're going to keep you honest on your government, because that's our job. But we welcome your support for this. It is a really important miscarriage of justice that is happening and has been allowed to happen. So we welcome all of you supporting Councillor Van Mierlo's brilliant motion. Thank you.
Councillor Van Mierlo.
Thank you. Thank you for your input, and I really appreciate what you've done, Councillor Wise. And I hope that we can move forward and help support these women. Thank you.
Thank you. We go to the vote on this motion, this substantive motion. All in favour, please show. Thank you. Anyone against? Any abstentions? Thank you. It's carried. Item 16 is a notice of motion submitted by Councillor Hindle entitled Taking Action Against Gender-Based Violence. Councillor Hindle, can you move your motion, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Taking action against gender-based violence. Do you know how many women per week are killed at the hands of their male partner or family member? The Office for National Statistics reported in 2023 that it is an average of 2 women per week. Since writing this notice of motion, I found more recent statistics that an estimated 1 in 4 women experience domestic abuse in their lifetime, even worse than I reported. However, this may even be an underrepresentation, as often abuse goes unreported. I welcome the Labour government's commitment to halve violence against women and girls in the next decade. However, this cannot be realised by national government alone. We need action from local councillors, council leaders, and the police and crime commissioners working together. When women do manage to report a rape, only 3% secure a conviction, sometimes with a wait of years for a case to come to court. This has become a crime without any fear of punishment. Sadly, it seems that we're in the middle of an epidemic of toxic masculinity. There is an alarming increase in misogynistic material available online, normalizing harmful attitudes. For example, teenage boys and young men can be influenced by men such as Andrew Tate. The ramifications of the 2022 Sarah Everard case, where she was abducted, raped, and then murdered by a serving police officer, are still being felt. More locally, there have been 202 assaults on females of either violence with injury or sexual offences in Preston City Centre alone. These were recorded within a 12-month period until October 2024. The police have identified Preston as a hotspot for cases of sexual exploitation and high numbers of domestic abuse. In better news, in a recent police undercover Ask Angela test of Preston venues, they found only 5 out of the 26 staff were unaware of the scheme. So, additionally, there are physical and emotional costs to violence against women and girls on survivors and their families, with a range of health issues and mental health impacts. Also, recent research found between April 2022 and March 2023, there were more suspected domestic abuse victim suicides rather than partner homicides. 30 women a day tried to kill themselves as they saw no other escape from domestic violence, with at least 3 women a week actually succeeding. To combat this gender-based violence, part of the answer is in the actions proposed in the motion. At the council, we are holding joint stakeholder meetings to consider the safety of women and girls, and we have identified a need for more CCTV cameras, improved lighting in the city, and we would like to fund the Red Umbrella initiative from Changing Lives to provide an outreach worker to work alongside the Foxton Women's Centre and provide support for sexually exploited women. We are proposing to produce a women's safety strategy, exploring joining the White Ribbon Pledge, and consider the feasibility of bystander training for all staff and council members. A change in culture and attitudes is what is needed, and this affects everyone in this chamber, not just women. And I would like everyone to consider their position on this issue to help create a culture where misogynistic attitudes to rape and violence are unacceptable. Please support this notice of motion.
Councillor Varty's down as seconder, but she's not present. Have we got a seconder, please? Councillor Close, thank you. Sorry. Jointly with Councillor Morgan. Is there any, does anybody want to speak on this? Oh, hang on. Councillor Stephen Whittam, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you to Councillor Hindle for bringing this to the Chamber today. I can't argue against any of this, to be honest with you. I don't think anyone in the Chamber would either. There's a number of things that I want to pick up, though. I think from a personal perspective, as the father of 3 girls and the grandfather of a young 7-year-old girl, absolutely get where you're coming from with this. The one thing I would say is that the language in the notice of motion could have been stronger. I don't think it goes anywhere near far enough, and that's not a criticism. I understand why you brought it, and I would offer across the house here to work with you to improve things and to strengthen our kind of ask from a council perspective. There's a couple of things about the campaign Ask for Angela. Recent BBC report in Birmingham and Liverpool found out that whilst it had been rolled out across the city, a number of staff in the licensed premises didn't act on it and didn't understand what it was about. So there's an issue there around how we actually get that to land within licensed premises. I think we should be picking up on taxi firms and buses as well. I take your point about lighting and CCTV, but I think that there are other mediums where women and girls are subjected to violence and misogyny. The other thing is you've asked the potential in there in that notice of motion about asking for a budget. If you want the budget, say what it is and say what it's for. I know you mentioned an outreach worker, but in that notice of motion, I think it should be a little clearer. But I absolutely 100% support it, and I hope everyone in the chamber does as well. Thank you.
Councillor Duke, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much, Councillor Hindle, for bringing this forward. I will definitely be supporting this and really welcome it. Like Councillor Whittam, I too had hoped to strengthen it slightly in terms of a commitment to undertaking the White Ribbon Pledge and to commit to providing bystander training, but I believe that would have to be part of budget. So I hope that Councillor Rawlinson will take that into account in his deliberations going forward. But I did want to share the reason why I feel this is so important and why I'm so glad why Councillor Hindle brought it forward is that we as women see examples of microaggressions against us on a daily basis. Now, I work in a pretty senior management position and I have this every day as well. And I just wanted to bring to light some examples of these behaviours that I've seen as a councillor, just so you can recognise it and maybe adapt your behaviours. One of which was maybe having a conversation while Councillor Hindle was introducing her thing. That is a microaggression and really should be avoided. When I've been in some meetings, I've heard people muttering, "Oh God, not her again," you know, or rolling your eyes when a female councillor is talking. That happens, and these things add up. I've also had people who aren't councillors, to be fair, refusing to work with me because I was a woman, saying they would work with a male councillor and then copying me in on the email saying that they weren't going to do that. I've also had aggressive messages sent to me at midnight, not by a councillor, but by a political activist. And when I complained about their inappropriate behaviour, it took weeks for that to be picked up. And then when they were talked to about it, they messaged me yet again at midnight on telling me that for being a coward, for raising that their behaviour was unacceptable. So these are the types of things that we have to deal with. And when I was, I went down a bit of a rabbit hole this morning, I must admit, looking for some materials that could be used. It doesn't need to be expensive. We talk about anti-racism a lot and calling out racism. We should be aspiring to be anti-sexist and anti-misogynist. And I went on, what was it, the Royal Pharmaceutical Society, and they'd basically had I had a poster about how to recognise gender-related microaggressions, and another one about what do gender-related microaggressions look like. And I just went through the examples. These are from pharmacists. And I was like, yeah, recognise that, recognise that, recognise that. And it varies from being talked over in meetings to having mansplaining. There's a whole range of it. So it's not just about violence against women. These microaggressions add up and put women off coming into politics. And I think that's a real shame. So I just wanted to say again, thank you very much, Councillor Hindle, for doing that. Really appreciate it, and I'll be voting for your motion. Thank you.
Councillor Little, please.
Thank you, everyone. Merry Christmas to everyone in the chamber. Firstly, I'd like to thank Councillor Hindle for bringing this forward. Personally, I've got 2 young girls, and I've witnessed firsthand and supported a member of my family who's been on the receiving end of something that was mentioned in the report here. So I don't want to dwell too much on that. It's a fantastic motion that you brought forward, and it's vital work that needs to happen. We did want to go a little bit stronger. I understand the reasons as to why we couldn't. The one thing I'd like to maybe discuss with you out of here is how do we monitor the progress that this report would be making? And are there any targets that we have in place to see if it is having the desired impact in the future? But that said, fully support, and thank you for bringing it forward.
Councillor Wise, please.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and thanks, Anna, for bringing this forward. Today, we've seen the conclusion of the trial in France of men who raped Giselle Pellico. All 50 men alongside her ex-husband have been found guilty of rape or sexual assault. I salute Giselle Pellico for her bravery in having this trial in public. Watching the videos of her being raped must have been horrendous for her. You might think this could never happen here in Preston, but I don't believe that. The fact is that gender-based violence in this country is at epidemic proportions, which is why the government puts tackling it on a par with tackling terrorism and serious violence. There will be women members in this chamber who've been victims of gender-based violence. As a girl, I was once asked to pull my knickers down by a man when I was walking home from the shops. I ran for my life. As a young woman, I was sexually harassed by my male boss. I'm always careful when I'm out by myself and very aware of who is near me. And I'm not peculiar in doing this, because it's actually what most women do. We know we have to be vigilant to try and keep ourselves safe. One of our female planning officers undertook a dissertation on women's safety and planning as part of her MA, and her sample of people surveyed were other officers in this council, and it was about how they felt here in Preston on safety. She found that the city is inexplicably gendered, where women are excluded from everyday activities based upon fears which have been subject to them from childhood. She found that women adopt avoidance and precautionary strategies which alleviate feelings of fear, yet restrict their use of the city. From a planning perspective, there is little evidence to suggest that women's safety is a priority of policy implementators within the council. What I find so disappointing is that we're saying this when I was actually saying this 40 years ago, and still things haven't changed. Going back to Giselle Pellico, the fact that in this country, women who report rape only have a 3% chance of the report ending in conviction is a horrifying statistic, as Anna said. It also puts many women off reporting rape in the first place. As I think some of you are aware, I spent much of my working life working in the domestic abuse sector. The fact is that not only do women not feel safe on the streets, but many are not safe in their own homes. Anna gave some local statistics, but domestic abuse is not only about physical or sexual abuse, it includes emotional and psychological abuse, coercive and controlling behaviour, stalking, so-called honour-based abuse and forced marriage. The figures that Anna gave are only the tip of the iceberg, which I think she acknowledged. The fact is that violence against women and girls needs to be called out. It is rooted in the inequalities between men and women. The vast majority of domestic abusers are men. Giselle Pellico's abusers were men from all walks of life. This is something that cuts across all classes in society. What is really concerning is the way that the internet is now being used to abuse women. I think women and girls need to be really careful about what they put on social media. Stalkers have been able to use the social media to pick on women to then stalk. It's also easy to purchase tracking devices on the internet. For example, abusers can purchase electric sockets that look just completely normal that contain a camera in them. Or they might give a teddy bear when they're no longer with their partner, female partner, for the children, but it contains a camera in it. It's unbelievable the things that you can now purchase easily on the internet. I've been campaigning on these issues for over 40 years, and it's sad that we're still saying the same things as we said in the early 1980s. When my mother was the MP for Preston, she was campaigning on these issues. I now have a granddaughter. I hope in 40 years' time, she's also going to be campaigning on these issues. I'm pleased that we're developing a women and girls strategy and that we want to provide bystander training for members and officers here. However, it's not just good enough to support these ideas, as we do need a budget to put some of them in practice, including more CCTV and supporting the Red Umbrella Initiative. We just ended the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. So let's hope that by next year's 16 days of activism, we've made real progress here in Preston and see a reduction of violence against women and girls. Thank you.
Councillor Thompson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not sure how I follow that. That was very good. I think it was 2021 in April, there was a very similar notice of motion brought before this council by Councillor Debbie Sharon. And I must admit what has happened since then. And it doesn't appear as though there's been a lot happened since that last notice of motion. So I hope that this isn't just hot air that's going off in this room. I hope that there's some actions that follow this. I think the notice of motion, I'll certainly support this. How can anyone not support it? But I would have liked to have seen it probably broadened out to talk about the cultural and religious reasons for this. There's more than one particular, it's not just a misogyny that plays into this. There's a lot of different things. When I read it, I think I went ouch a bit because it said male violence against women is part of a broader culture of misogyny in our society. And sometimes when you're trying to convince somebody and campaign for something, you need to get people on your side. And as someone who is a father who's completely supported my daughters, and I've got 3 grandchildren as well, 3 granddaughters, then I want to see the best for them and the safest world for them. And that particular line went, ouch, you know, there are a lot of good blokes around as well in this world. And I hope that, you know, that their example can shine through. I think there is a very nasty side to society at the moment. It seems to have got worse, not better. And I think that is certainly something that's feeding into this general misogyny. So I will certainly support this motion. Thank you for bringing it to the council. Thank you.
Councillor Rawlinson.
Anna sent this to me a few weeks ago, and I said straight away, it's a fantastic motion and it needs to come forward. I'm a bit disappointed Councillor Duke seemed to try to turn it into something else. This is a motion that's clearly about males killing females on a regular basis and, you know, sexually assaulting them, abusing them. In light of the fact that, you know, the Lib Dem manifesto put forward the most misogynistic policy in the history of politics in this country at the very recent general election. You all know what I'm talking about. But you can guarantee that we will be putting, excuse me, I'm speaking. Is that a microaggression? You can guarantee that we will be putting our money where our mouth is.
Councillor Brown, please. Hang on, Councillor Potter. Hang on, Councillor Potter. Councillor Brown.
Yeah, I just want to commend Anna for bringing this forward, and also the female speakers that we've had. I think we've got a I always say we've got to listen to the people affected themselves. So what we need is a women-based conversation, women-based leadership on this, because obviously what women go through in society now in terms of sexual violence and harassment and the rest of it, we've got to hear those voices. And I don't feel in politics we're currently doing that. So anything we can do, and we got Clive Dunshaw now, who's really leading on this, I think, as the Labour Police and Crime Commissioner, to get women involved in the conversation and describe their experiences and actually have policies which is based around their own experiences is what we need to do, because women aren't listened to enough. And we've got a cultural issue where men are behaving in a certain way. We need to have men as advocates as well, because there's certain behaviours males are taught is acceptable in a very sexualised society, which is completely unacceptable. So there's been fantastic awareness campaigns in Greater Manchester calling, it says, is this okay? So if people are harassing a woman in the streets, is this okay? No, it obviously isn't. So we need a huge cultural shift, and we've got to listen to women's voices because they're not being heard. And I think in politics generally, they're not being heard at all levels in society. Women are underrepresented, and we've got to listen to those voices. It's amazing how many girls of all ages are just terrified just to have a night out, and we've got to listen to them and try and change society from this patriarchal male-dominated nonsense that we have. There's a Taylor Swift song I could mention, but I won't because it's got a rude word in it, actually. Maybe I will, who knows later. But anyway, we've got to really change the culture, really. And to do that, we need to listen to women and have women at the forefront of society and making these decisions, and us in positions of power actually sharing the power. Because, as was said previously, you look at company chief executives, you look at chief executives generally, you look at leaders all around, there's not enough women in there, and it's unbalanced. You look at the company boardroom, less women. Women are just often not listened to in society, and in many ways they are made second class by the power structures that we have. And the only way we can deal with this is to tackle those power structures. So, I'm delighted we got this going forward. Thank you, Anna. Brilliant speech. Thank you for all the female members who did speak. And obviously, we will be finding a way to resource this. Obviously, it's been a very passionate, emotive debate, and I understand that. But, we'll be taking action, and that's what's needed as a Labour Council. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Is there anyone else wishes to speak? Councillor Potter? No? Okay. Thank you. Councillor Van Mierlo?
It's fine, thank you.
Do the seconders wish to speak, i.e. Councillor Close or Councillor Morgan?
Thank you very much. I won't speak for too long, which I'm sure everybody will be very happy about. Yeah, really happy that we're bringing this forward, and we're ending the year with two really strong motions about issues that impact women. Because as Councillor Wise said, both motions are issues that have been going on for decades now, and they're still very prevalent in society. Absolutely echo that we need to be really strong about fighting violence against women. I'm really happy that some of my fellow female councillors have shared some of their experiences, because it really does highlight it affects women of all races, ages, creeds and backgrounds. Just sharing some of my own experiences of having had some scary experiences due to being a woman. Back when I first joined the council in 2016, I was campaigning to remain in the EU referendum. I was a brand new councillor, and received a message from a gentleman saying that he hoped I would get raped and murdered by an immigrant for supporting Remain, because that's what I deserve to be in a woman who was publicly speaking my opinion, which was, of course, very pleasant as a young woman at that time. I do agree that the rise of the internet and the ease of which men can harass, message women with disgusting, violent messages, and can stalk and harass women is such a prevalent issue and needs to be sorted out and stopped, because that is not the only message I've received as a woman. I received many more since then, and it's almost become normalised to experience this as a woman. I've sort of just learned to get on with it by now. In personal life, just going off of safety for women on nights out. I recently, unfortunately, had an experience where I was out with some friends, male and female, and a gentleman in a nightclub felt it was appropriate to come up and touch me sexually inappropriately, as if it was okay and as if there was nothing wrong with that at all. I was very lucky that I was with friends who protected me and helped get that man kicked out instantly, but I did not report that because I almost felt, what was the point of that? What was the chance that this gentleman would be arrested or would be penalised for what he did? And it's unfortunately just something that's very normal now as a woman these days. You put up with it because it's something that's gone on for such a long time, and it's almost normal. We've had so many cases about this in the media as well, and you can understand why women like myself who've had experiences like this, where they've been messaged or harassed or touched or assaulted in any way, don't come forward. We've seen so many cases. Sir Everard, a man in a position of power, did that to her. You know, this was a man in an institution that's meant to protect you. Why would you go and then go to that institution to try and protect you? Cases of so many women going forward and reporting cases like this, instances of harassment and abuse, many times ignored by public institutions. So I'm really excited to hopefully be going into the new year with a really strong approach to ending gender-based violence against women, and also supporting our WASPy women as well. So thank you to all my fellow female councillors for your experiences today. I'm very proud to be able to work alongside you with this. And of course to my fellow councillor Van Mierlo for bringing forward the WASPy case as well. So I would look forward to working with everyone with this.
Everybody, nobody else want to say anything on this? Councillor Hindle, do you wish to come back?
Yeah, I'll be brief. I'd like to thank everybody for the cross-party support. I can assure you that we're ambitious as a council. And as I stated, we shall be preparing a women and girls safety strategy, which will be co-produced with local organisations that work with women in our city. Just as an insight, we are looking at tools used in different areas. We've spoken to somebody at UCLan that uses, the students use an app where they can immediately inform their local security really if there's an issue. And but that does come at a cost. And also Reclaim Blackpool have a tool to map incidences of sexual harassment. That's on a website. Because again, Jade, it's so true what you said. These sadly, these are such common incidences that unless they're even the most major ones, they do go unrecorded. So it's just a simple way of people being able to record it and then map that information that could be passed on to the police. And obviously that would help, I think. Stephen, thank you for your comments. I was just going to say, there's only so many words you can put into a short speech. And I wanted to assure you that we are taking a cross-cultural and diverse approach. And we do realise that it's a multi-complex. It's not just one-dimensional. We realise that. And a bit of good news. I'm setting up a meeting in the new year with the Police and Crime Commissioner to look at this issue and see if he can help with some funding. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Hindle. So now we will vote on this motion. All those in favour, please show. All right. Thank you. All those against? Any abstentions? Thank you. The motion's carried. Now it's almost 4 o'clock. We're going to take a break till 4:15. Thank you very much.
today anyway, don't you?
Right, you can sit down. Thank you. Right, move on to item 17. Is a notice of motion submitted by Councillor Thompson entitled Local Government Reorganisation. Let the residents decide. Councillor Thompson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This came out of the widely published letter from the leader about the land grab of making up Greater Preston. However, since the English devolution plan has been published, I think it really makes this obsolete, so I'm going to withdraw this notice of motion.
Are we clapping for everything today? Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Okay, let's crack on. Item 18 is the annual report from the Standards Committee, which is for noting only. Councillor Atkins, as chair of the Standards Committee, do you wish to speak on this item?
Just briefly, I think as we've got a councillor code of practice. I think as we ask councillors to stick to the code of practice, I think it's more than useful for us to have a standards committee. And it's, believe it or not, out there in the real world, people think that standards committee is something really big and important and effective. And I think, you know, it could be, and sometimes it is. I just like to say, I think it's a really good investment of Preston City Council money. It's got a completely, we have diverse membership of the committee. We've got parish councillor, we've got 3 independent people who contribute really usefully to the committee. We've got cross-party councillors. So I think it really is there's as much equality in the standards committee as there needs to be. I'm very proud of it, really. I think we do some really good work. And the only thing we don't have are sanctions. And but Angela Rayner said she's going to look into sanctions for standards committee. So I'm waiting for her to just rock up personally and knock people's heads together for us. So thank you.
Councillor Whittam, did you want to say something?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just got one small point on that subject of the consultation by Angela Rayner. Only this morning, the government consultation, strengthening the standards and conduct framework for local authorities in England has hit the streets, which is really, really helpful. It talks about the introduction of a mandatory minimum code of conduct for local authorities in England. We have already got a formal standards committee, so we're already on that one anyway. It talks about introduction of the power of local authorities to introduce sanctions as well. So that's something that the standards committee, because I'm on standards as the monitoring officer knows, excuse me, sanctions has been an issue for us. It's been an issue for a number of the members of the committee. So I welcome this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whittam. Can we now note this item? Thank you. Item 19 is the leader's report. Councillor Brown, do you wish to speak on the report, which is for noting only?
For noting, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we now note this item? Item 20 is special urgency decisions, and details of one of those was enclosed on the agenda. Another 3 have subsequently been published too, all of which are for information purposes. Can we please just note the information? Show of hands, please. All in favour? Thank you. Oh, anyone against? Thank you. Item 21, as stated earlier, the extraordinary meeting which was arranged for January the 14th is now cancelled. Have you all noted that? You've been told 3 times now, just saying. The next ordinary meeting of council will take place at the usual time of 2 p.m. on Thursday, January the 30th, 2025 in the Town Hall. Item 22, exclusion of the press and public. Now we need to consider the passing the following resolution, that the public be excluded from this meeting during consideration of the following items of business on the grounds that there is likely to be a disclosure of exempt information which is described in the paragraphs of Schedule 12A to the Local Government Act 1972, which is specified against the headings to the item, and that in all the circumstances of the case, the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing it. Are you all happy to agree the exemption and move to Part B?